Broad Street Review podcast is an extension of Broad Street Review, Philly's home for arts, culture, and conversation, an online arts and culture journal covering the greater Philadelphia area. I'm your host, Darnell Radford.
Today on the podcast, Morgan Bassichis drops by to talk about the limited engagement production, Can I Be Frank? Exploring the life of queer comedian Frank Maya. On stage at Wilma Theater, October 25th and 26th. Here is my interview for Can I Be Frank? By Morgan Bassichis. And welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and today I'm in the virtual studio to talk about a limited engagement coming to Wilma Theater called Can I Be Frank? And so I'm here with the guest, and I didn't ask beforehand, so I'm not going to butcher his last name, so I will give him a chance to introduce himself.
Yes. Darnell, thank you for having me. I'm really grateful to be here. And I wish more people before introducing me were just like, you just say your last name before we say it. So my name is Morgan Bassichis, and I use the they and the them pronouns. And I'm really happy to be here to talk about this show, which I'm so excited to bring to the Wilma.
Great. So I'm just making note. Great. So tell us about Morgan.
I mean, what can I say? Let's see. Well, I am a performer, and often I have a really hard time. I always think that will kind of like end the question and the conversation, and we'll be able to move on, and I'll be able to ask them questions about like their childhood. But then they always say to me, "What kind of performer?" And I'm never good at explaining it, and I often just like mime having a microphone and hold it up to my mouth. I talk on stage. I'm kind of a comedian, kind of a performance artist, kind of a musician, and I'm making a show about someone who has an eerily, cosmically similarly blurry relationship to all those genres, Frank Maya. So so I sort of crisscross between those different worlds and mediums.
Okay, so multidisciplinarian.
Sure.
It's a good title.
Let's take it.
Okay, so I know you say you're a performer, but you do comedy. So yes. When did you get into comedy?
Oh God. I mean, how long do you have? I mean, I've been definitely trying to, like so many, like just the classic, homosexuality narrative of like, I've been trying to make people laugh since forever. Mm-hmm. And, so I feel like I just been trying to make people laugh since moment one. And I never thought about being a comedian. I was always in the plays, in like school plays growing up. And I feel like that's where I got so much of my training as a performer, is just being in school plays with people. And then I, spent, almost a decade sort of, in my 20s, not performing actually, as a community organizer in San Francisco, working around issues of mass imprisonment and police violence and abolition within the LGBTQ community. And like all people who are obsessed with performing, couldn't avoid it forever. And eventually moved to New York about 11 years ago and didn't know what I was gonna try to do. And I, some of it was like, is it playwriting? Am I doing monologues? Am I doing performance art? And this kind of thing that's kind of in the cracks between those things became a hospitable place to hang out, and with that sometimes looks like stand up and sometimes looks like something else, and kind of wherever people invite me to do it.
Nice. I think I feel like that's the move to New York sort of spiel. I think everybody gets there, and it's so big that you're just totally. Like, I had a general idea that got me here. Yeah. But now that I'm here, it feels like there are endless possibilities.
Totally. Yeah. And you're like, wait, how do I how do I get in cabaret again? They're like, you don't get in cabaret.
Where exactly is the theater community?
Exactly. Where do I go?
Yeah. I spent a little time in New York City. I lived in Jersey City, and I was working in New York for about 2 years. And I realized everyone is freelance. And so I could not see a path to making that work. I was like, I need a job. I need full-time
Totally.
benefits. So I ended up coming back to Philly, but I still have my tentacles in New York in various places.
It's a good place to have tentacles.
Yeah. So this piece is called Can I Be Frank? So tell us about it.
Oh, wow. It's I made a piece, and it's directed by Sam Pinkleton, wonderful director, about a performance artist, comedian, musician named Frank Maya, who performed in the East Village and then really all around the country in the late 80s, early 90s, before dying of AIDS in 1995. And, like so many artists who died of AIDS, I had never heard his name before. And I imagine most of the people who come to see this show or hear of the show will not have heard of his name. This will probably be their first time hearing about him. And, we can chalk that up to the massive number of artists who died because they were abandoned by the U.S. government, and because so much of our histories get erased along the way. So I just kind of fortuitously ended up randomly kind of meeting his brother, actually, about 2 years ago. And it just started me on this journey of learning about and kind of communing with and almost becoming obsessed with this new to me artistic ancestor, and kind of studying his work and finding out that he performed at many of the same places I performed, and that he's, there's lots of resonances between some of our jokes and our songs, like that, they have a lot of echoes of each other, even though I'd never heard of him and it's decades apart. And so I started this journey of studying his work and interviewing his friends and family and loved ones and colleagues, and trying to make a show about him, about my relationship to him, introducing people to him, and also kind of in a deeper way about the relationship between generations, between a living performer and a performer who's passed on.
Interesting that he died relatively forgotten, like many artists, but there was work left behind. How much work did you find?
It's a great question. And this is where I have to thank the videographers at all of our arts institutions. I'm like, bless the videographers. You know what I mean? Bless the videographers who are painstakingly sitting there and videotaping every freaking performance. Mm-hmm. And then bless the loved ones who, especially in the age before social media, digitized all that footage. And that's how I found the footage of him, was because his former boyfriend, Neil Greenberg, who's a choreographer who I had known and loved and hadn't made this connection, had painstakingly uploaded all these videos of Frank's performances at places like the Kitchen and Performance Space, what was then called Performance Space 122, La Mama, and a bunch of audio of Frank Maya's songs. And so because Neil had digitized those performances, I was able to look him up after I learned his name, and then sort of felt like kind of the secret garden, discovering this kind of secret garden of, wow, all these performances. And I'm so grateful that they were documented and that he digitized them and did all that work. And I should say, he was a huge figure for those who were knew him, and he was a big figure in the scene. He was not he was well known. He was well loved, and so the memory of him is very much alive with all the people who knew him and worked with him and went to see his shows religiously. And in particular, I found this show that he had done in 1987 at La Mama. La Mama being a historic theater started by Ellen Stewart in the 60s on East 4th Street. And I found a performance by Frank called Frank Maya Talks. And this is when he's kind of transitioning from being a musician into kind of like this performance art space. And he's going to talk. That's the giveaway in the title. He's going to talk. And it's where he's kind of beginning to transition into this kind of stand-up space and into like finding the jokes in between the songs. And he has what he calls these rants, these kind of like these rants that are sometimes funny and sometimes really rageful and sometimes very political and sometimes very catty. And I honed in on that performance, and I actually started the show in that same room where he performed it at La Mama. Wow. When we did it this summer. When we premiered it this summer, we performed it in that same room at La Mama, the club at La Mama that he performed in 1987. And now we're bringing it to other places around the country to see what it's like outside of New York, which has been a real thrill.
Nice. Was like, did La Mama assist with the production? Was it like co-produced by them?
I approached them. I just walked in there, and Nikki Perizzo, who's legendary curator over there, was who knew Frank, and lots of people who've been at La Mama for decades, they knew Frank, of course, and they were very hospitable to this kind of kooky idea of will you let me in particular make a show in that space? They have multiple spaces, and it was really such a blessing to get to do it in that space and do it at La Mama, because so many people who knew Frank and family members and loved ones, exes, people, fellow performers in that same time and who are still performing to this day also got to see the performance. So it was like people who knew Frank and also people who knew me but didn't know Frank, and it was a really special coming together.
That's amazing. I think it's so interesting too, because archival is so important. And over the years, there have been stories of how so much footage was destroyed just in efforts to save space somewhere. The technology now allows for archiving to be a little bit more of a breeze, as opposed to having like, rooms full of file cabinets or like racks full of, films and cassette tapes and whatnot. It's so great that they were able to archive it.
Yeah, and we should say, that's how we know about so much art by artists who died of AIDS, is because their family members and loved ones meticulously archived their work and made sure it was protected and survived. And a couple of years ago, Neil and Frank's family and other loved ones made sure that Frank's visual art, he also made beautiful drawings, were put into the Visual AIDS Registry. Visual AIDS is an incredible organization that makes sure it works with artists who are living with AIDS and also HIV and AIDS, and also who have passed on, and making sure their art is taken care of and protected. And they say, what is the AIDS crisis? The AIDS crisis is not over. And it's so important that we both remember artists who have passed on and also honor artists today who are living with HIV and AIDS.
Absolutely. I know that this has always sort of been, or at least, as far as I can remember, as long as I've been alive, that there are those comedy, those acts, those moments, those shows that are really more conversational than they are, I'm just hitting you with liners like one after the other. They've been more like retrospective, like, a comedian will go through a moment in their life, and when they reach that moment of transition, they can write about it. And so now it's just a conversation about how crazy this situation was. And there's chuckles in it, but for the most part, you're really just kind of processing that life is effed up. Mm-hmm. And so the audience just sort of there relating to you and periodically laughing. And that is still, you would still say that you went to a comedy show.
Totally. Yeah. And I think now for people now, like, it's so common to see queer comedians. Yeah. And like that, it's like, oh yeah, of course, queer comedians. And like, yeah, you go to it. And it's so important for me to remember when he was doing this, he was one of so few, and to go and be out, not even just outside of New York, but even like uptown in New York or like in Midtown in New York, going to like, Caroline's and performing. It was a political act, and he knew it was a political act, and he talked about it as a political act. And he was one of the first queer comedians to do a set on network television. He had a set on MTV and on a Comedy Central subsidiary, kind of a partner company or whatever it's called. And I love that also so many of his jokes I can imagine me or other people making, because like comedy is such a shared, it's like we're tapping into a shared groove, a shared kind of like a shared vibration. And it's not about like, oh, this one individual. And I think that's what's been so powerful about the show, is that it's like, we're individual performers, we're solo performers, but we are so made up by each other, even if we don't know each other. You know, we're never really solo. We're never really alone. We're never really individuals.
That's what Sondheim says.
right. That's right. No one is alone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what did you learn? What did you learn about Frank Maya that you knew nothing about before you found all this information?
Oh my God. I mean, it's just been like, it's been such an incredible journey. I mean, his friends and family have been so generous with me, sharing stories and memories, and photos, and you know, that is just one thing I have such deep respect for. It's like especially for those who have lost so many people, who've lost so many people to AIDS. You know, like they are very used to making sure they carry with them the legacy of artists. So I'm really grateful for that. And then the other thing that really struck me throughout this, and I talk about in the show, that the research is like, he's making this work during the height of the AIDS crisis. So he's making comedy while people in his audience and people in his community are dying. And if not dying, organizing relentlessly and tirelessly to demand that the government release drugs that could save people's lives. And so it also resonates so much with our moment when we are witnessing a genocide. We are witnessing a genocide that is not some far off genocide. Of course, for those of us who have family in the region, it's not far off, but it's our government who is paying for this genocide to be carried out. And so I've been thinking a lot about what it means to make performance and make comedy while our government is carrying out atrocity, which of course is not new for the United States. The United States is founded on that. But that was really like important for me to think about his work in the context of the moment he was in, and why we need both militancy, and we also need this, like the pleasures that comedy allow for.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. At the height of AIDS, he was doing comedy, because you think about, you know, what comedy does. It kind of makes fun of these moments that have happened in your life, whether they are great moments or terrible moments, and it is a way for us to process what's going on, and you know, and try to find a pathway forward. And
that's right.
And the hypocrisy of, like, you know, pointing the finger at the victims as if it was completely their fault, while there is a cure over here, or there's research that could be done, and for whatever reason, you know, they're in a meeting saying like there's not enough people for this to matter, or the people don't matter enough to put any effort into this. And that was terrible. I've seen, you know, all the documentaries and all the films that have depicted that moment, and you just can't believe, and with New York being the epicenter of it all, you just can't believe that this happened, and it was in such a concentrated space for the most part, and right. to ignore it for so long,
right?
It's just crazy,
right? And it speaks to the power of movements and organizing, that the only reason why there is any semblance of funding or treatment for HIV and AIDS is because of the organizers. It's because of the activists who really were fighting for their own lives and fighting for their whole community and continue to. And I think what's really powerful is that comedy historically and now can be a tool, a weapon to speak truth to power and to say when you are in a position of being deemed disposable, of being deemed like killable, of like your life doesn't matter. There are ways in which a joke can call that out and quickly articulate that in a powerful way and give us a sense of like hope and resilience and resistance and fortitude along the way.
Yeah. And we process news now through satire. It's like the most effective vehicle because you have to make fun of how crazy the situation is. And it is a way for people to digest and really process the importance of it. It's like you get a little laugh out of it because it's crazy. No, but seriously, it's crazy that is happening. So here's your action step. Here's what you need to do next.
And that's in theater history. I mean, that's in the court jesters. That's in that's in performance being a place, being one of the few places often people have to say the things that the state does not want you to say.
Yeah. So have you, did you discover anything about yourself in the process of exploring Frank Maya's work and then coming to the reality that, bringing this performance to life is what you needed to do?
Oh, yeah. I think learning about, I've learned so much about myself along the way, and see so much of myself in Frank. And what the process has also shown me is how much we project onto our artistic ancestors. Like there's so much projection where we need them to be something so that we can be something. And in some ways, there are versions of this project that could have been really kind of very on the nose and kind of saccharine of like, this amazing person, nobody knew him, he made me possible. Now, those things are true. And at the same time, there's also power dynamics between us, and there's aggression between us, and I'm the one who gets to be on stage, and he's passed on, and that's a conflict. You know what I mean? And he didn't get to live to do this. And so, and there's all those dynamics that happen in every relationship, competition, like resentment that happen between generations and happen with our own and idealization. We need to put people on pedestals, and we need to make them saints. And we do this in the queer community all the time where people have to be saints who have passed on, who came before us. And it's like, they weren't saints and neither are we. Right. So in some ways, this project has also helped me come closer to my own like humanness, non-saintness, as I've been trying to get closer to his humanness and non-saintness.
Do you think that nature, because as soon as you said that we put people on pedestals, I was thinking about everyone who has the title diva is because, their gay fans gave it to them, not because they earned it or, the industry, went through a system and said, nope, you check it, you're a diva now.
Right. Yeah.
What I was going to say about that is, do you think we're doing that? Do you think we're doing that to deflect from our own lives? Because we tend to live vicariously through the people that we worship.
Wow. Such a good question. Level. It's such a good question.
I feel like there's many in the queer community who want to be Charlie XCX right now.
See, I'm just trying to stay aware of who Charlie XCX is. That's my goal. I'm just like, someone younger, tell me who these people are. I have heard of Charlie XCX, listeners.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, that's a human thing. We make sense of ourselves based on those who are around and those who came before us. And, our attachment figures, that's kind of what we do. And particularly for those, people who are marginalized, who've been kind of deprived of seeing their own reflection, we can become very attached. to seeing our own reflection, and sometimes not even be able to see what's really there, or be able to, it almost flattens what's there.
Yeah.
And I think, this this pressure to need to be perfect, right? And there's something about, like, when you study the work of an artist who was a real person, they just aren't perfect. Nobody is, and they're just a real person. So how do you be with and share about someone who was a real person?
Yeah. Everybody has flaws. I also think it's very valuable for us to explore other people's flaws as well, because especially when it's a celebrity or someone of note, to find that out about them kind of makes it, it sort of gives us a pass for our own flaws, to say, like, everybody has flaws. Look at this guy. He did all these great things, but he wasn't perfect. Like, everybody's not perfect. Even with religion, we expect the messengers of religion to be perfect, and they have proven time and time again that they are flawed.
No, religious people are perfect. Please don't say that.
In some imaginary world.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, God, it's okay. It's okay that we are deeply, even the part of, even the level of, like, that a solo performer has to have a level of ambition that's like, listen to me, look at me.
Yeah.
And it could be easy to be like, oh, that's a bad quality and you should hide that. But in some ways, it's also such a human thing, and it becomes something that I get to really look at in the show.
Yeah. It's like the business has conditioned us to be hungry. And they tell you if you're not hungry, it means you don't want it enough. And it's like, well, perhaps I do want it. I'm just not hungry. I made several phone calls and now I'm here. Like,
wow. And then pretend not to be hungry, right? Like,
yes.
It's like, you should be hungry, but then don't look hungry.
Yes. It's kind of like, there's that monologue that America Ferrera does in the Barbie movie, where she's talking about everything they expect of women, and that can be applied to almost anything. There's this whole list. You have to be this, but not too much. It's like, in order to be a leader, you have to be assertive, but not too overbearing. It's like, you have to know what you want, but you can't be. But you got to be open to change. It's like, make up your mind.
Totally. Yeah.
So basically, in order to survive in life, you have to be a Gemini.
And you know what? You're talking to someone with something Gemini in there. So to all the listeners, I have to be honest, there is Gemini inside of me.
Yeah.
And hey, we work with what we have.
Yeah. So you do this show in the summer. How does Wilma get wind of it?
Yeah. Two lovely people who I respect deeply, two artists, came to the show. Sharon Hayes and Brooke O'Hara, both of whom I've been following their work in performance and theater for many, many years. And we're like, let's figure out a way to bring this to Philadelphia. And they are both professors at Penn, and they were like, let's figure out a way to integrate this into, so students can have access to it, and Philadelphia audience can have access to it. And so they made the connection with the Wilma, and it's been such a joy, such a treat to get to prepare for this. We last month brought it to Portland, to the TBA, the Time-Based Art Festival that the Portland Institute for Contemporary Art runs, which is just this amazing annual festival. So that was our first time bringing it outside of New York, and this weekend in Philly on October 25th and 26th will be our second one. So we're really excited about it.
Great. So now you've got it. It's kind of in the can, like you've created it. It's ready to go. Is it locked, or are you still realizing things about it? Is it changing, or is it fairly intact?
We're I think we're still discovering stuff about it, and still kind of like honing and refining it and finding screws that are loose and tightening those screws. And it has been like the gift of a lifetime to get to work with Sam Pinkleton, who's like so brilliant, and this is really a show that we've made together. And so he has been able to see things that I couldn't see, and really had a level of rigor that's been really helpful to be like, that's a good enough joke, but can we make it even better? Which is a real gift to have somebody who holds that expectation.
That's great. In general, how are you at receiving feedback? Like, what is your mindset on it?
I'm great at receiving. Yeah, I'm really good at receiving positive feedback. Really good at receiving positive feedback.
Positive feedback. Tell me more about my eyes.
Absolutely. I'm very open. I just want you to know I'm very open to receiving positive feedback. I will receive it humbly and open-heartedly. I mean, I think it's a newer experience for me to get to really. It's so intimate to work with a director on a solo show because you're inside of such a small thing together. And it's Sam said this really amazing thing early on in the process where he was like, we need to make sure this is a wonderful night of theater for people who have no connections to Frank Maya and aren't bringing any kind of attachment of like, oh, it's important to learn about queer artistic ancestors. Like, he's like, we just need to make a great night of theater regardless. And that was a really helpful kind of bar for us to set.
Yeah. And so set the scene for us in the space, because it's a solo piece, right?
Yep.
Is it a trunk show? Is there a full set? What's it like on stage?
I have never heard the term trunk show before, but that's exactly what it is. It's a tote bag show.
It's a tote show.
It's a tote show.
Awesome.
It's a tote show. I recreated in the show the backdrop that Frank Maya used in his performances, which is this really big yellow life preserver. The life preserver was kind of like a image icon that he used that I think was about throwing each other a life preserver. Like, I think that's really what it felt like to me. Like let's that is our work in the world, is to throw each other life preservers. And so he many times performed in front of this big yellow backdrop, and I asked a dear friend Eli Woods Harrison to recreate it. So it's just me bringing that backdrop to wherever I go, and then the lights.
Cool. Is there audience participation?
Yes, but not in an annoying way. Don't worry, you guys. Very minimal, super easy. I would almost say no, basically. I would almost say no, but that would be a lie. But to say yes would also be give you the wrong idea. So yes, I do make the audience talk a little bit.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that people want to be engaged. They want to walk into a space and totally forget about the world and just give themselves to this moment. But if they have to participate, absolutely not. You are participating because you're here.
You are.
The
but I promise you,
feeds everything.
yes. But I promise you, I make it easy.
Yeah, I didn't say that because our listeners don't like audience participation. It's just to know. It's just to know that there's some kind of engagement, because any solo show, whether it's a one-man performance or comedy act, it's personal, and you are engaging because you're saying things as part of the show, and people are resonating. Like, you're seeing heads nod, you're seeing responses, people are laughing, they're looking at each other like, that sounds like you. Like, if you ask do you know anybody who does this? And they look at they always look at the guest they came with going, that's you. That's you do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how I work in my performances too. Like, I'll have the lights. I want to see people's faces because I'm in a conversation and just happen to be the only one who's talking.
Mm-hmm. So thinking about how hard it was to find past queer artists, how does that inform your archival process as an artist?
Whoa, like archiving my own stuff?
Like how do you keep
Oh,
track
wow.
of your stuff?
Wow. Terribly, like chaotically. Although I have a practice. I'm kind of obsessed with making lists. So I kind of have this part of my practice is like making these obsessive to-do lists that often I'll use as kind of material for my work, where I'll use a piece of paper that is like from the place where I'm at that archives that particular moment in time, and then I'll try to generate some jokes that will almost be like a kind of timestamp. So that is, I think that's part of the way in which I try to archive along the way.
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking about, in high school, I was in poetry club, and, poets are all quirky, like every single one of them. And there was we had one poet who kept all of his poems in a jar. He'd write them and put them in a jar. But for some reason, when he read them to us, he would rip it up afterwards.
Wow.
Like, I got it out of me. I presented it to you, and that's it. It's done.
Poets are so dramatic.
I know. And I was just like, how do you not have a copy of this somewhere?
The drama. They're
Yeah.
like, I'm going to go throw myself off a cliff after this. I'm done.
It's just interesting. As an artist, working in the arts community, being surrounded by so many talented people, like I don't know how the world could exist without artists.
Right.
There's so much, like it can't just be all about money and politics. Every now and then you want to escape all of that. You want to try to make sense of all of that. You want to unpack it. Like the arts allows us to do that. And it's so interesting that society, at the highest level seems to think that this isn't the most important thing. Being able to archive our lives and tell stories so that the people who come after us, can know where we came from.
That's right.
How to get here.
That's exactly right. I totally agree. And I think if we look at any social movement also throughout history, it's filled with artists. Mm-hmm. And if we look at some of the most effective social movements, it's because of the contributions of artists. So it's like we think of art and activism as separate, or art and politics separate. But when we look at ACT UP, when we look at the civil rights movement, it's just chock full of visual artists, performers who are bringing their gifts to bear about how to carry the message.
Yeah. Have you given any thought to your mission or purpose as an artist? Like what motivates you? What inspires you to create what you create?
Wow. I don't know, but I do know that we need to use everything we have. And I know on my mind 24 hours a day, as I'm sure it is on so many of the minds of your listeners, is like the horror that we're witnessing in Palestine and now in Lebanon and Syria and Yemen, of just like the absolute atrocity that is escalating. And so I do think about how do I use what I have, which is basically language and music. How do I use and humor? How do I use those to when I'm in spaces where we're trying to come together and take action? And so, to create spaces where people feel welcome and empowered and agitated and to act together. And that's a long tradition of artists who do that. So, and a lot of my work also is trying to use humor and music as a ways to make concepts that might seem kind of intimidating a little bit more accessible, and to kind of disarm the audience into saying, okay, we can do this. We can talk about really kind of scary and hard things. We can and we can go through it together, and there can be levity along the way.
Yeah. I always feel like when especially when a comedian just kind of jumps out of the box with something very personal, and it's like, usually a thing we don't talk about in public, but because it's part of their act and it's in there, and it's like the audience is shocked for a second, but also kind of relieved. It's like, there's never really an outlet to talk about these things. And so this comedian is going to, pour their heart out to us and talk about these things that I can't talk about with my partner, I can't talk about with my family, or, I've never been able to talk about in past relationships. They might find a way that makes it easier for someone to move forward and be more, more present about those conversations.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. May it be so. We need everything. We need all those kinds of moments we can get right now.
Yeah. Do you have any artists that inspire you? What artists, if any, inspire you the most?
Let's see. Who inspires me the most? Oh my gosh, so many people. It's like that moment that I think I almost have nightmares of this question because there's so many people that I almost draw a blank every single time. But the person that's coming to mind right now is Lily Tomlin, who I just feel like has who coincidentally was also one of Frank's favorite performers and comedians, who just has this incredible way of disarming and I just think she's such a brilliant comedian and thinker, and her relationship with Jane Wagner is such an inspiring model. So I really look up to both of them.
Yeah. I think about some of the artists who were not publicly out, and you look back at their past work and you can see the signs are there. But
Totally.
If you're not paying attention, you wouldn't be looking for them.
Totally.
Yeah. And Lily Tomlin is so iconic. I don't know anyone where if you mention her name, has something negative to say.
Totally.
And she had so many characters that are still timeless today.
Yeah.
I know when someone, it's kind of like when someone asks you what your favorite food is. I think when you're a kid, you say pizza, but now it's whatever. You're like, I don't know, what did I have for dinner last night?
Exactly. I don't remember anything that's happened before right now. Exactly.
Yeah. So I've taken up a lot of your time, but is there anything else you want to say about the show before we part?
No, I just really appreciate your questions and hope you and other people come to the show, and really excited to see how Philadelphia audiences respond.
Okay, and tell the audience your last name one more time.
My last name is Morgan. That's my first name technically. My last name is Bassichis, which sometimes I say it sounds like masochist. So if you forget and you think, how does Morgan pronounce their last name? It's like masochist. Okay, so just that's. I'm going to leave you with that. I'm going to leave you with that.
All right, great. The production is called Can I Be Frank? It is a new performance by Morgan Bassichis.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. You got it.
It is on stage at Wilma Theater October 25th and 26th. For more information, you can go to wilmatheater.org. If you want to learn more about Morgan, you can go to morganbassichis.com, and those links will be in the show notes. Morgan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. It was great learning about you and learning about Frank Maya. And it's making me think about other artists that we don't know anything about. I feel like here in Philly, the William Way Center has a great library. I think I want to go peruse and see what I can find.
Beautiful. Thank you, Darnell.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to the show. I have not decided which day I want to go, but I will be there and I will say hello at the end. But thank you for chatting with me. And everyone, go get tickets, wilmatheater.org. You know, that theater won the first Tony. Thank you to our guest, Morgan
Go there and
Bassichis,
get
for
tickets.
joining us
Buy
on
more than
today's
one because theater is
podcast.
more fun with a
The
plus
Broad
one.
Street Review
Bring a
podcast
friend,
is
bring
an
an act,
Emory production.
Bring
If you would like to be a guest on the podcast,
Bring a viewer.
visit us online at
Get into a fight online and tell them what you have at the
em3ry.com.
theater.
That's right.
To
That's
buy a
right.
ticket.
Let's do some
Get
healing.
involved
There's some
with
healing
Broad
in
Street
there.
Review.
Yes.
Head
Thank
on
you.
over
It's
to
truly
our
a pleasure.
website at www.broadstreetreview.com and click Get Involved at the top. While you're there, help keep us running and click Donate to find out how. There, you can also find our social media links. Thank you for your part in keeping the conversation going.